HaleyLeeStudios.com, 561-755-2166.
Spell it.
HaleyLeese.com.
So it's HaleyLease.com and 561-755-2166, right?
561-755-2166. That's it.
Talk 1470 WWNN Pompano Beach, Boca Raton, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
You say you need to lose weight for the holidays or just to stay healthy. Nothing seems to be working except frustration. The wait is over. Order your organic detox tea and resolution drops from the Wait Is Over company and start feeling better by shedding pounds. Not all detox systems are the same. Listen to those who have used the tea with fantastic results. Visit her website, totallifechanges.com/421-9711 to get all the information you need to feeling better. Drink 2 cups a day, and you too can lose 5 pounds in 5 days. Call today, 954-696-8330, and listen to testimonials about proper weight loss using the tea. Ask about the opportunity to earn $50,000 by Christmas with a Total Life Changes business opportunity. Call today, 954-696-8330, and change your life today.
CPA for the People provides CPA services and business consulting for innovative creators. Collaborative, personal, affordable. We specialize in tax consulting, business consulting, financial statement compilation, and personal finance. For more information, please go to www.cpaforthepeople.com or call at area code 630-244-7893. The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Good morning, I'm Raquel the Bell on the one and only WWNN 1470. Today in the studio we have Tracy from We Are the People. You can join her every Monday night from 7 to 7:30 p.m. on her website, wearethepeople.tv. Tracy tackles the student loan dilemma and offers viable options. And now, here's Tracy.
Good evening and welcome back. You've joined We Are the People, and I have Jeffrey Van Treese back with me again tonight.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad you made it. So just a few things I want to talk about beforehand. As you well know, Donald Cleveland and I have been involved in Student Services Society. And I really haven't been able to dedicate the time that I need to that. So what's going to happen here is I am going to have to put the show on hold for a while. And that's been kind of a hard decision, but I'm spending way too much time fundraising for the show. Now that I don't have a regular sponsor and I need to get things up and going. So November 30th is going to be the last show for We Are the People. And it's going to be a good month, though. So tonight, Jeff and I, we're going to talk about the forum, the Democratic Forum, of course. And we figured that's a good one to after last week, we were talking about the Republicans. So now we can take a few shots at the Democrats.
Absolutely.
So, but we are having our Student Services Society fundraiser. As I mentioned last week, that's going to be December 17th from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. at Churchill's Pub in Miami. Now, they've been around since 1979, so believe me, when you Google them, they will pop right up at the top. And our headliner band is Sun Ghosts. So SUNGHOSTS, and their website is sunghosts.com. So I encourage you to go check out their music. I was really impressed, and they're a lot of fun. So we're going to be rocking out with them, and also 5, 6, 7, 8 other bands as well. And they are all donating their time. And Churchill's has given us the door for Student Services Society, and they're going to put a threshold on the bar. So if we get over that, I get that too for Student Services Society, and that way we can go ahead and get our nonprofit status finished up. and we can start putting together some scholarships and some grant work and get, our website finished and all that kind of stuff. So please come out and join us. So let's see, what else? Elections, of course. So what I never realized before is the importance of local elections. And those are the people that sometimes do get to the big positions. They all have to start somewhere. And the thing is, we have so much corruption in politics right now. What we need to do is we need to find people of noble character, whether they be Democrat, Republican, or independent. So next week, I have a special guest who is running for state representative. I believe it's District 62, and that's going to be Whitney Rawls. He does a lot of work with the youth, and I think you'll find him very interesting. He's very involved in the community, and I'm looking forward to hearing his platform. So please join us next week for that. And then the last 2 weeks, are we going to be doing anything?
Well, we'll see what happens in the news, but yeah, I'll certainly be back.
Okay, so we're going to continue our political discussions for the 2 weeks after that. And then I'll be probably running that special show that I told you about, the 2-hour show, and we'll put that up on our Facebook page, We Are the People Students for Liberty. So that should be very interesting as well. And then that'll give me some time to go ahead and do what I need to do and get Student Services Society up and going so we can start helping the people that need it the most. And speaking of that,
It's a good segue into some of the discussion with the forum this past week.
Yeah, so Bernie and Hillary both have plans for free college, but they're really quite different.
The main difference is that Bernie offers a lot better of a plan. That's sort of what it comes down to.
Well, it's a lot less expensive for the taxpayer, let's put it that way.
A lot less expensive for the taxpayer, and it offers students much more.
It not only offers students much more, but it offers more students more.
Yes.
Hillary's is limiting in the sense that, you have to hit certain qualifications and you also have to work a 10-hour work week. Now, I worked more than that on my, not student loan program, work-study program. But it's really hard. It's really hard to raise a kid to work and to try to study. I mean,
Well, if you think about it, the choice that these students are going to be facing now is, well, they have, of course, they have to find a job they can work.
that's not there.
That may or may not be there, but their option with Hillary's plan is to go to a junior college or community college, a 2-year associate's degree.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite different than what Bernie's offering, which is a 4-year public university degree. So generally speaking, public universities have very high reputations as far as their rankings in U.S. News and World Report, along with just the general status in the business community and the public sector if you have a degree from a public institution compared to a junior college. And of course, it's a baccalaureate degree that he'll be coming out with and that he would be providing free of charge to the student versus what Hillary's proposing, which is a 2-year associate's degree.
Right, or certificate program.
Or a certificate program. So what the actual product being offered is vastly different. And Bernie's proposing to offer this at all public universities across the country. So this is going to be, a dramatic, revolutionary change that Bernie Sanders would potentially be offering. That Hillary's plan certainly falls far short of that, but it's still better than nothing what she is proposing.
Well, I mean, it's you've got bureaucracy. I mean, because she's talking about medians and all means testing and all that kind of thing. And whenever you have bureaucracy buildup, you always have a lot of costs that go with that.
Well, if you think about it, means testing for a college student today entering college, they might be very much in need later on when their debt starts piling up. And so, how do you decide who's going to get free college or not? Of course, that would beg the question of, would you have a means-based test for who gets elementary, middle school, and high school education? Of course not. It's provided free to everyone.
And it should be. I mean, this is the future of our country, and we rank 1 and 2 in ignorance now as opposed to education in the world. So that's not a good thing. You have people that literally, and just on a side note with immigrants, I mean, they know our Constitution and our laws better than we do. I'd put any of them up against any high school student or even college students, depending on what they're in there for, including myself. I mean, I had to really study. I had to go back and restudy all this stuff to do this show.
Well, it's often complicated to understand, and you were talking earlier. It relates to what we were saying earlier about local government and states government. That is states. State constitutions alone are incredibly complex instruments, and just following it is a full-time job. So I don't necessarily fault anyone for not knowing the ins and outs.
It's hard. It's difficult.
Of the public sector. I mean, it would be incredibly time-consuming to know every little thing that's going on.
Well, you should at least know the United States. Oh.
The United States Constitution, yes, that's
and
something.
And they do know the Constitution. I mean, my neighbors are immigrants, and I've went and asked them questions that I didn't, know. Just to see, it's kind of like I'm always experimenting within my own world.
Oh, absolutely. And it's amazing how people often will have very strong opinions about constitutional issues, and they might not even know which constitutional amendment is implicated in a particular issue. I mean, if you go to somebody on the street, almost everyone has an opinion on Roe v. Wade and abortion. But if you say what constitutional provision is implicated in Roe v. Wade, a good number of people would not be able to tell you.
No, that's for very, very sure. And one thing I'd like to point out, we're supposed to be talking about the forum. We actually have added in a lot of stuff. The forums, the debates, they do not tell you enough about each person's issues. What we just discussed here was not discussed in the forum. So it's very important to look outside of these because they didn't give the rundown of what Hillary's plan was and what Bernie's plan was on the forum or the debate as far as that goes. You have to go elsewhere outside and do your own studying to find out what their plans really are. And it has to be something more than memes on Facebook.
I actually... I would like it if they did it the way that Dr. Phil interviews his guests, where he puts up a big chart and he says, like, if two people have conflicting stories, he'll say so-and-so's story on one side of the chart and someone else's story. If you were to take two people's plans and say, okay, here are the similarities, here are the differences, and then it would just become apparent as opposed to just talking points and so forth.
And there are groups out there that do that. And it's funny because I used a meme of a sort that actually, when they Obama and all the different plans when they were running for president, and Romney and all the different plans for them, and you need to see those differences, and people don't realize. They just listen to other people, and that's just really not a way to vote. And it's really important now. And let's jump over to Martin O'Malley, because he hits on another thing that's very important to me. I'm always talking about the privatized educational system now, and often I've done shows on the privatized prisons and the same money. Martin O'Malley's actually done a lot of good stuff with that.
Yeah, he talked about that last night, how he thinks that the profit motive doesn't belong.
It doesn't.
That's something that's called the prison industrial complex. The whole idea of making money off of locking people up, that obviously creates what's called moral hazard in public policy and economics. We call that moral hazard, where you have an interest that's from a industrial sector that conflicts with the public interest. And in this case, we see that with prison industrial complex. It's now become a jobs program. It's like where a local economy is
revolves
around building a prison and incarcerating people. It's what's led to the mass incarceration for nonviolent drug crimes, which we've just seen more and more of. And it's something that if you were to poll the country, most people really would not agree with the idea of locking up and incarcerating people for having a marijuana joint or something like that. It's just absolutely not consistent with the public interest or what the public would want. And I'm glad that he brought that up, because this is something that came up during the Republican debate quite a bit with Chris Christie and John Kasich, after they said we need the government out of our lives, but at the same time we need the government locking people up for committing crimes against themselves by smoking marijuana. Of course, we don't lock people up for smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol, but we need to lock people up for smoking marijuana. It's so interwoven with the prison industrial complex and the profit motive for locking people up.
It is, and I mean with traffic tickets, and now, and just like with the student loans, with the interest, if you can't afford. I think, I don't know, were you on the show when I was talking about the grandmother from Alabama that was locked up over a traffic ticket?
I don't believe so.
Because she didn't have the money to pay the ticket. And it was a minor thing, really, but even a minor ticket is, you're looking at several $100s now. I mean, there is no cheap ticket nowadays. So they financed it. So basically, the same thing was happening with these tickets. That is what has happened with student loans. You pay and 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 you never touch the interest. Eventually, these are poor people. Alabama is a poor state in a lot of areas. And eventually, she was unable to make the payments and they put her in jail. Okay, you have people sitting in jail that can't afford bond.
And then they just sit there
and
they
just
languish
sit there and languish there, and they could be very well innocent, or it could be something very minor, but yet they're making a lot of money on them. It's a per person.
That's another
deal.
important point, not to stray too far from the forum, but that's one of the things that often we don't realize, is that in jails are people that are occupied by people that have not been convicted yet. And the only thing that is needed in order to arrest somebody and put them in jail is probable cause. And when you study that in law school and you see what a low bar that is, it is incredibly low. It's basically just more than a hunch. So they can't arrest you just based on a hunch, but just a little bit more than a hunch.
Just a little bit more than a hunch.
And they can arrest you and put you in handcuffs and throw you. Even if the case might get thrown out, it might be absolutely not enough evidence to convict a rat for purposes of going to trial, but just to arrest you, they don't need any of it. They just need a little bit more than a hunch, and they can take away your liberty, and then you have the huge disparity.
Your car, your rent, you end up losing everything. People are losing everything for nothing.
Absolutely, yeah. And
okay, so the neighbor's smoking pot, the wind blows this way, and they want you for whatever reason, or they just happen to be standing there. Well, that's probable cause. You're smoking pot.
We've talked about it, how foolish our laws are, how we don't prosecute real crime. We're not prosecuting fraud that's committed on Wall Street.
Oh, yeah.
But
because they have enough money to pay everybody off.
They can pay everybody off, and they're too big to jail, as they said. And our former Attorney General Eric Holder testified to that in Congress. They're just too influential to actually bring charges against, and they can ultimately buy their way out of prosecutions. It's really something.
And there you go, Citizens United.
And that came up during the forum,
yes,
too.
Yes, it did. Bernie, was he the only one? I think he was the only one that mentioned Citizens United. And of course, but I find that even people, on the Democratic side, they don't want to get rid of their PACs. They don't. It's something that ultimately favors the Republicans more, but it certainly is. But they still get funded very well, and they're all very wealthy.
Well, that's the thing, because Wall Street has to give to both parties, because they have to be in both parties' pockets. They can't just give to one side or the other. It generally favors the Republicans, but both sides are feeding from the trough. So it's great to have somebody that is this far into the election cycle that could become president, that's talking very seriously about Citizens United.
And that's the thing. I mean, Citizens United has totally corrupted our political system. It's just...
Well, it really was the icing on the cake. I mean, it was operating this way beforehand.
It was.
And then what Citizens United did is it took this incredibly corrupt process of political bribery and made it a constitutional right.
It made it legal, yeah.
Well, it made it
law.
It made it a constitution. Well, it's more than a law. It's the supreme law of the land. It's the Constitution now protects
corporations. Yes, you now have the right to bribe. Well, and that's the thing too. Now, how good can your education be when it's not your first imperative is not for the student, it's for the stockholder?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. So they always want to cut, Okay, and I can't tell you how many teachers I've talked to over all the different schools where there's, they're required, depending on certain things, what type of, what am I trying to say? How you're accredited. You have different curriculum depending on how you're accredited. And I know there's curriculum out there that doesn't belong.
Right, and even at the college level too, you see
At
it
the
where,
college level, that's exactly where I'm talking about.
there's a lot more use of, for example, graduate students and adjuncts that are relatively cheap labor as opposed to tenured faculty. And you're seeing that. Some
Oh,
universities.
mostly adjuncts, almost all now.
That you
The for-profit, forget it. You
For
don't,
profit, they're independent contractor status,
and they
that's-
make like $1,500 for the class.
and community colleges pay even less. So you're not getting certainly these people can't live off of what
No,
they're
they
making
can't.
as instructors.
I know too many of them.
So there's certainly a lot of that.
And they're still struggling with their student loans.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So now you might be able to go get loan forgiveness if you're working in a certain area, but who can afford to do that? I mean, even with attorneys, how can you want to go out and be, a do-gooder? How you can't afford to do that because you can't pay your bills.
That's often the case if you work for a public interest group or something like that. Of course, they have limited funds, so in order to hire you, they would have to have funding to hire you, and that's often limited. With teachers, they have certain programs where you can go into remote areas or to underserved areas, and then you can teach there for 10 years or something like that, and then you get your federal loans forgiven, but it's only for federal loans, not private. And I think that also ties back into the forum here, because they only were talking prospectively.
Right.
The existing generation, many of whom are millennials that are absolutely saddled with student loan debt, nobody's
And I
suggesting.
want to see them helped.
Yeah, and nobody's even suggesting anything about them. So we're talking about, at earliest, we'd be talking about people who'd be entering college in 2017, 18, or 19, because that's how long it's going
Before
to
it
take to
takes
pass
to
it.
get it going, yeah.
That's how long it's going to take.
And
so.
by then, I mean, we're looking at increases. Now, Obama has passed with the new budget. They can robocall you to death now. Okay, that's
Yeah.
back in there. So, I mean, and people, and 2/3 of the 41 million people with student loan debt are over the age of 35. Okay. And the average age of people working at fast food restaurants is like 29 or something like that now.
Yeah.
So, okay, you don't want anybody, you don't think they deserve $15 for working at a fast food restaurant, but they need it. If minimum wage had kept up with everything else, we'd be making $25 an hour right now, or close to it, right in that area.
Yeah, it's not adjusted for inflation as it should be.
As everything else, but yet CEOs are making 940 some percent more than they were back in the late 70s. Medical has went up 250% almost. I mean, everything has went up. And college tuition is one of the highest things, well over 1,000% since the late 70s. So how are people supposed to pay their bills? And the only person that really is doing anything about this is Bernie Sanders. Although I did like Martin O'Malley. I liked him a lot better than I realized I did.
Yeah, no, he was pretty good. The one thing that I really liked that he said was he actually came out and said that we went to war on false pretenses, talking about the 2003 invasion of Iraq.
Yes.
I had back when I had my show, I had the late great prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi on, and we were talking about how he would prosecute Bush for this. And that's what the false pretenses goes to, is that they were fabricating information to the public and to Congress, that is the Bush administration, to suggest that we were under imminent threat from Saddam Hussein, that he was going to come invade the United States. And of course, all of that was bogus. They knew it was bogus, and it was 100%
And
purposefully
how many people
fabricated.
died?
Many people died, and not only did many people die, but now we are infinitely less safe. We now have ISIS, which was given to us ultimately by the Iraq invasion. That was the whole thing about destabilizing Iraq, is that now it's being overrun with fundamentalists, the very thing that we were supposedly stopping. But in fact, what was there was the opposite of that. Since Saddam was a secular dictator, he did not actually endorse any of this stuff that ISIS is
so
doing.
everything was lied about in that whole situation.
Everything was lied about. And it's amazing that
and they're doing the same thing with Syria now.
Well, it's amazing the gall that when Donald Trump and Bush, not at the last debate, but the one before that, Donald Trump was saying how disastrous the war was, and then Bush's counter argument, Jeb Bush's, was he said, well, you can say what you want about his brother George, but at least he kept us safe. It's really amazing when you think about that, because think of how much less safe we are after the Iraq invasion.
Yeah.
We're infinitely less safe now than we were then. And he could have, O'Malley could have gone further. He could have talked about how Bush let bin Laden get away in late 2001 when they had him trapped in the mountains of Tora Bora and wouldn't send any deployments to go get him, and instead turned it over to Afghan warlords and let Osama
really,
bin Laden
come
get away.
on, let's sleep with the devil here.
He could have gone further, and I'd like to see some of these
Somebody
guys.
do that. Well, Cheney is being, it looks like Cheney's going to get prosecuted for what he had going with Halliburton over there. Have you looked into that yet?
I have not. No.
Well, we won't talk about that because that's too far off base anyway right now. So, but yeah, Cheney's, it's not looking good for Cheney.
Well, it's a good thing because there's something called conflict of interest that public officials are supposed to have.
Well, yes, but see, that's the thing. It's always a conflict of interest because these companies are paying the people in the highest positions in Congress. So how are they ever going to help us?
Well, in this case with Cheney, he was an executive with Halliburton that got at the very least, Halliburton should have been disqualified from receiving those contracts in Iraq at the very least. People...
And we've talked about the ridiculousness of what they get paid for these contracts, while our servicemen get paid next to nothing.
Right,
Their families are on welfare at home.
Well, they're no bid contracts. So there's no bid contracts. So they don't even... There's not even the appearance of an arm's length transaction.
You're my buddy.
It's really scandalous. We were rightfully so. A lot of people complained about Henry Paulson during the bailouts because he was coming from Goldman Sachs and then was negotiating the bank bailouts. But with Cheney, it was infinitely worse. He was actually he was the former executive that was now giving no bid contracts and then going to war on that basis. So it's really something.
Well, we've got about 3 minutes left.
Yeah, not much
so,
time.
I know, here we go. But just keep in mind, these political parties are not what they used to be, and you really have to do your homework now. And the more you look at it, and people are slinging mud at each other, and it's ugly. And that's why, I do hold a lot of hope for Bernie Sanders. He is the one that's looking to get rid of the big money. And whether or not Bernie gets elected, that is something we as people have got to really pay attention to. We've got to pay attention who we're putting in office, and that does start locally.
It starts locally. We, have to,
And I hate local elections because they're so petty, so...
They're very petty, and a lot of it's negative ads, and we're going to be seeing more negative ads coming up with...
in Coral Springs, they were pulling up each other's side. It was ridiculous the last... some of the elections, some of the shenanigans that go on, and, but we are out of time.
Yeah, that went by.
Well, Whitney will be back next week, so we'll talk more about politics, and he does a lot of great things for the community, so we'll put a more positive spin on it next week.
Yes, hopefully so.
So you'll be back, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. And again, join us next week at 7 to 7:30 on wearethepeople.tv or WNN 1470 AM, radio in South Florida, or iHeart. Thank you again for joining us. Have a good evening.
Take a walk on the wild side.
You have been listening to We Are the People with social advocate Tracy Marks, who every week bring to the light the needs and changes in our current system. Tune in every Monday night at 7 p.m. on wearethepeople.tv and participate in the conversation in the chat room or call 888-565-1470. Tune in next Monday for more information and facts, and stay aware of your surroundings and challenges at all times.